Hello there, and welcome to Dr. T for today, October the 31st. And as you can tell, this channel has been hacked in the name of all that is holy. Or not, I don't know, whatever. Can you guess who it is? I'm anonymous. Alright, anyway. So, stage one, it's really easy. Just kind of do your thing and it'll all work out. If you go over to the right hand, or sorry, let me figure out my right and my left here. If you go over to the left hand side, you should have no problems. You should be able to outrange the boom cannon and everything will work out in the end. For two, kind of go around the left hand side and do your thing again. And then in stage 3, I threw a shock just to test and see if I could actually pull it off. As you can see, I can. If you shock properly, you can actually get both those cannons and the machine gun in one shock, which is absolutely fantastic for you if you're trying to, work your way through this level. Now, because I threw that extra shock, it kind of messes up the cost of my shocks, but don't worry about that. If you're going through and you're doing it normally, it shouldn't be that big of an issue because you're gonna be like a round of shocks lower, I guess, in cost than myself. Now, if you're still having problems keeping enough shocks and you have smokes, instead of throwing the shock to buy yourself time while your tanks kind of move in towards that shock launcher, instead throw some smokes over your tanks, smoke them up into range of the shock launcher, and then throw a shock at the very end when your smokes wear off, and then your tanks will take them out, because all the defenses there are like mortars and sniper towers and stuff like that, and it doesn't matter what kind of distance you're working with. You can take it down and it doesn't care. It's not going to increase damage or decrease damage based on distance, unlike some of the other defenses. So, after stage 3 goes down, stage 4 is up next, and honestly, as far as stage 4s go, it's a pretty decent stage 4. You can kind of, I don't know. I hesitate to say don't bother with medics at all, just load pure tanks. But if you're a little bit lower and you normally don't pull off stage 4, if you went with all tanks, you might be able to pull it off, because the whole first half of what you're digging through is flamethrowers, which won't have any range on your tanks, and you don't need any heals because well, you're not going to be taking any damage. And then the, I guess, quarter after that is all machine guns, which, again, will do minimal damage. They will do some damage to your tanks, but it'll be very minimal, and you'll be able to kind of go through and chew those up. And then you hit, like, mortars and cannons and stuff, and by this time you've already taken out a whole buttload of defensive structures, so you should have built up a pretty good supply of GBE. So what you can do is throw down some GBE on the cannons before you're in range, take them out with GBE, and then move up to the mortars and use stuns to take out the mortars so that you can kind of coast through and get like shots on the HQ, if you would, without too much trouble. And then you'll have, like, at worst, a rocket launcher that's firing at you, which is not a big deal at all. It shouldn't do too much damage to your tanks, and especially if you've gone with, like, full boats of tanks, you're gonna have more targets. Hopefully, if you, like, do a reflare, things will sort of reshuffle, and you'll be able to kind of continue attacking while the rocket launcher switches its main focus to a new tank, hopefully that has more hit points than the previous tank. Okay. So, stage 5 takes all the easiness of stage 4 and kicks it squarely in the groin. Stage 5 is actually really nasty. There are 3 shock launchers, all of which need to be dealt with because they all have range on all approaches to the HQ. And then there's like 5 or 6 other boom cannons that also need to be, well, not all of them need to be dealt with, but depending on like which approach vector you're taking, I guess, you have to deal with at least some of them. So I decided to go left because you only have to deal with 2 boom cannons. The other 3 or 4 you can kind of skip past. And I figured by the time, you know, if you're a lower level account, by the time you've worked your way through the 3 18,000 hit point shock launchers, you're going to be struggling to get through the extra 2 10k boom cannons. Like, it adds up really, really fast. And your abilities are going to start getting really expensive. And unfortunately, they do have to go. They're all in horrible, horrible spots, so that, like, if you don't deal with them, they're going to do bad things to your tanks. Like, your tanks are going to feel the pain. They'll feel the burn. Like it was squat leg day. I don't know. So, okay. The good news is, if you clear all of the shock launchers and boom cannons, once you get up to here, it's easy peasy, and you'll be able to coast through taking down the rest of 5, and then you'll get to move on to 6. And now here's the killer: if you took down 5, you're probably not going to have any problems taking down 6. There was like no increase in difficulty. If anything, I felt like it was almost easier to do 6 than it was to do 5. Then again, maybe that's because I actually landed all my troops instead of just landing the 2 boatloads. I'm sure that probably would have made a difference, but the beginning here, this, I guess, first wall of defenses, it's all flamethrowers, so it's really just a GBE grab, and then I flare everything down into the bottom corner, and while the tanks are dealing with that first wall of defenses, I throw all of my, you know, barrage and artillery and things like that, and as you can see, by the time my tanks actually show up for the fight, this whole joint is just Swiss cheese. And I'm pretty sure if I had landed the 2 tanks, I probably could have, or 2 boatloads of tanks and 1 of medics, I'm pretty sure I probably could have done this attack. I just would have had to have been a little more careful about it, because as you can see here, I know I've got the DPS to just burn down the HQ, so I just started throwing shocks over at the, I guess it's 3 cannons and rocket launchers and sniper tower and all that kind of stuff. I was just like, you know what, I'm not even going to worry about it. I'm just going to stun lock it while I melt down the HQ, and then we'll call it a day at the end of the fight. But if I had landed with 2 boats of tanks, what I would probably have to do is shock that same cluster, but instead flare onto the back right cannon, because by flaring onto that back right cannon, it'll pull the troops in, they'll take out the cannon, and then they'll automatically switch to other defenses instead of just switching back onto the HQ while they're still in range. So in theory, they should be able to take out the cannons and the sniper tower, and then you can flare them back to where I was firing from, and you can kind of finish off the HQ from that position there, and everybody will be happy and safe. Whew. Okay, now, Stage 7. Sorry, it's tough to breathe in this thing, I tell you. Stage 7, blow up the shock launcher that's right there. Let your tanks kind of farm this left-hand side. There's a bunch of machine guns and flamethrowers and like a rocket launcher and stuff. None of those things are necessarily very scary, so let your tanks farm that while you throw your artillery and barrage at all the different targets. So the 2 touching boom cannons, which are obviously both gone, and then the 1 boom cannon here, all 3 of those gotta go. And then there's the 1 shock launcher on the left-hand side, it's gotta go. And then there, like, the second one that's shocking my tanks as they're trying to like pull away, I would strongly suggest just leaving it. You're gonna eventually outrange it. It's just, you might go through some growing pains as you try to get your troops out of there. So if you really, really need to, throw a shock down on it, and it'll tie it up just enough so that you can get your troops out of that danger area, and where you pretty much want to be is right at the 6 o'clock of the HQ, because if you're at the 6 o'clock, you'll be able to fire up and take out the rest of the HQ. Be very, very mindful on the right-hand side. You can see that boom cannon sitting right there. It is waiting for one of your tanks to just wander over a little too far. So if you pay close attention to that right flank, if you see the boom cannon start doing bad things, flare them and try nudging them just a little to the left. Not too far though, because then you're going to be in the range of the shock launchers and the other boom cannon. Anyways, guys, hopefully this has been helpful. Hopefully this has been entertaining, and most importantly, hopefully you guys have a fantastic day. Thank you very much for watching.